as we all know, I think students perceive themselves to be different, and some of them are very hard on themselves. Some of them think I'm great, I'm God's gift to teaching, and therefore I should get all threes at this point. So we have just a variety of responses. And sometimes I know with mine, I've said, why do you rate yourself so low? You're doing a better job than whatever they may have given themselves. So it's a range. Any other questions on the assessment piece? Okay.
We're not really supposed to be talking now. Lowell's next. But we did want to talk a little bit about how these assessment forms came to be, because we have a lot of programs at our institution, and people say, well, how did you get those people to work together? And then how did you get 4 institutions to work together? So it's a pretty amazing story. And when we started out with the clinical faculty training, we did indeed have all different forms, but we were training these people in the same way. And so we said, well, it makes sense if everybody uses the same form then. So first you have to look at as David said, all the different things that have to go into it, the basis for it. You have to look at your own school and see, does that fit in with what all the other schools are doing? And the fact is, while we're very different, we believe the same things. So that was sort of the basis of it.
And then we were able to come up with a form that we used for about 5 years. And then JMU was able to get a STEP grant, and we did a major revision at that point. And the amazing thing was, at one point we asked clinical faculty to come in and help us get feedback, and we got over 70 people to come in on an afternoon in the spring to give us feedback on our form, to just volunteer. So that was just a real affirmation to us that we were sort of along the right track, getting us that feedback. And the reference guides came because EMU was getting ready for NCATE, and we needed some way to provide that next layer of the connection with the SPAs. And the reference guides are actually that link to the SPAs with the observation forms to create the documentation that each area has looked at and made a connection between the observation form and the SPA. And that has been approved and been cited many times by NCATE as an exemplar example of the way to use the same observation form across a unit or across institutions, because JMU and EMU are both NCATE institutions, and TIAC and just a state approved. But we have both made it through with that form and the reference guides. So that's just sort of the way it came. Yeah. No, it's we have some.
We do not have any. The question was, do we have any other colleges in the same district, right?
Yeah, but we have some people that sometimes come in and they can use their own forms. Every once in a while we'll have like a UVA student or William and Mary or Old Dominion try to come from across the state to place a student. But the school districts we're working with are not that large, that by the time they place all of us in both semesters, there aren't that many spots left. So occasionally they might take another 10 or 15 student teachers all year long from outside of one of our 4 schools, simply because of sheer volume between the 4 of us and how little they are. Mm-hmm.
the question is, would it be unrealistic with about 12 institutions? And I don't know, but last year in Atlanta, we did a presentation, and there were some folks there from Portland State University. And they were looking for some way to put school divisions and institutions together, to work together. So I went out in November and talked to them, and they are setting up a consortium based on our model. Now, I'm not sure what their specific goal is going to be and the one focus that they're going to have, but there are a number of school divisions and institutions that have gone into this. They've already started it. They got some money that they could hire somebody to direct it. And I met with representatives probably of 6 or 7 school divisions. The superintendents were there, and deans, and folks like that, and there was one representative for a number of small institutions. So they think it can work for them.
I would suggest that you start with 4 or 5 and do as many as you can and see if you can bring people on. Invite everybody and do as many as you can. And even if you get 4 or 5 to agree, then at least that's 4 or 5 less that the teachers have to know. I mean, we've always sort of said that this works because JMU agrees. It would be very difficult if just the 3 little schools did it and JMU did their own thing. It would be still better if the 3 of us did it, because at least we would all agree. But it really is helpful because JMU and all their massive numbers goes along with it. But I would say start. Get the people that you know and get the school divisions that you agree with. And I don't know if you're a big school or a little school, but if you're a big school and you could bring some little schools along with you, I'd say go for it. Oh, I'd go, but then I'd go to some schools that you know and see if you could get them to come. And if you have a big school and a little school or 2 that you think would be open to this, talk to them and we'll be able to help you. I mean, we'll talk.
And everything, all of our materials are yours to use as you wish.
Anything that we've given you, we've given to you for free, and that's why we gave it to you.
Yeah, you don't have to start, from scratch. It's yours. That's why you have the CD. That's why you have our website address that's on the CD. So you're welcome to use that, in any way that you can and to adapt it for your own use. We are very pleased with it because we did take all of these other, the in-task and everything else and used it so we know that it fits all the requirements of all these different areas. So.
If my district would come to me and say, we'd love to set something up with you as a university to train up cooperating teachers, I couldn't get there fast enough. And I would imagine that other institutions probably could do the same. I just feel like if we were to be able to kind of meet,
Say something.
they're all the companies, I don't know, I'm not the biggest level. I still see if they could come together to agree. And where are you? On the town. Oh, okay, yeah, that's right.
Sounds like you two need to talk. Maybe. Yeah. The closest university or college beyond our consortium is about 50 miles. So we don't have a concentration of 12 institutions. So I think that is more complicated. But I think the advice that was just given is really good advice. That I think there would become a critical mass at some point. And as really the smallest institution of this group, I can tell you I can't possibly duplicate the kind of training and coordination individually that I received from the consortium. And for everybody except the largest institutions, I think that is the key point. If they can grasp that point, that they really can't provide the level of service individually that we can provide collectively, that's what pushes it over. So I think the advice about the large institution being willing to kind of be a lead partner is really critical. So that's where I would head first. You know, I think at this point in the training, we've talked about assessment and you've seen the forms there. It's really a critical moment for us in the training. It really is, to me, the time that is most difficult, and it's also the time where we give a lot of time. Because I'm curious, as you've looked at these forms, what's the question that comes into your mind that you may get from your colleagues on college or university faculty? If you tried to have a form like this in place, what's the first question you're going to get from your colleagues at your college or university? What's their problem going to be, do you think? One form for every student-teacher placement. So what is your colleague that's in elementary ed going to say, and what's your colleague in science ed going to say, and what's your colleague in math going to say? Yeah. This isn't about me. This doesn't meet my needs. I can't use this form. How can I use this form to observe a high school math teacher? How can I use this form to use an elementary school math teacher or just a regular elementary school teacher? That's part of what makes this a little complicated, and my colleagues talked a little bit about that a second ago. But that's what makes the content area part important. What's the biggest challenge that you face in working with your cooperating teachers? As they go into this role of cooperating teacher, or we call them clinical faculty, what's the most challenging thing for them that you hear? What do they say is hardest for them? Any thoughts? Well, what I hear is two things. How do I make the observations? What do I look for? What I need to see? And how do I translate that into either constructive feedback for the student teacher, and in fact, how do I write it in the observation forms? Because that's a lot of the new role challenge for them. And I would imagine you hear some of that from those cooperating teachers. Well, the content area focus is where we try to help with both of those areas, actually. As my colleagues just said, that helps us with our university and college faculty, because the reference guides that are so important in this and that do translate these forms into content-specific information is the bridge. Okay, and that's what we use to endorse this consistency that we're talking about, and that's the way we coordinate that into content-specific observables. And I kind of refer to the reference guides as giving you those content-specific observables that the teachers can use in their schools, that the college supervisors can use to translate the forms, and that answers the question, how can this form work for all the content areas? So I really encourage you to take a look at the reference guides that are in the CD, because that'll be very helpful. You can access those online through the website as well, the JMU website. And I find them very, very helpful. We do an activity, and fortunately, Joy let me off the hook today, so that we didn't do it in this presentation. We do a jigsaw activity. How many of you all use jigsaw? You're braver than I was before I got into this group. But, you know, that's a kind of complicated little exercise. But it really works well because it pushes our clinical faculty into applying the information from the content reference guides to the evaluation forms. And that's the way we use the jigsaw. We send them out, they have to develop expertise in one of the sub areas, and they come back to the larger group and share that. And then they practice writing the observables into the evaluation forms. Critical moment in our training, and we think it goes very well. Reference guides, don't forget them.